How you doing? This is Mike from Mike's Random Thoughts. Today's episode is a little different. This is an off the top and one I did not anticipate having to write out. You know, life is interesting. Yesterday, I recorded an off the top where I made a slight little announcement in that episode. And I said I'll be announcing for sure soon. However, if you can see from the podcast show and the blogs that the content that I've been moving towards is basically moving in the direction of faith-based episodes and theology as well as history and naturally true crime. So, and I said that because after 6 years of podcasting current events and often political talk, it has caused myself to have some problems. I've had the loss of jobs, death threats. I've even had loss of family and friends, all due to my personal political viewpoints. I've spent my whole life studying history, religion, true crime, politics, and war crimes, along with organized crime. Now, like I said earlier, I didn't lose just one or two. Since COVID, there's a reason why my series special is called 2020 Year of Chaos. Because that was the year that everything did go to chaos for me, doing podcasting and blogging and everything else, along with a lot of other people. You know, I would be asked the most random, weird questions in places like at work or in the store line. And these aren't regular questions, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was asked questions like, I think God's a female. How do I feel about anal sex or homosexuality? And it'd be at the weirdest times, even during a dinner rush at work or in the store line, or because I was wearing a shirt that said, not today, Satan, and somebody would make a big deal about that. Or I mind my own business. I'm going to the Social Security Administration to handle some business, and somebody's talking, who's Native American, was talking to me about back when I was doing the Osage murder research for my Osage episode I did. He's like, some of us don't want our stories told. And I told him, you know what? I believe in freedom of speech and freedom of information. And every story has a right to be told. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to go ahead and tell it. And I left it at that. So as I got older, I finally began to ask myself, what do I want to focus on with this podcast show? What direction? What subjects? I know I want to make faith-based and history along with true crime for sure. That's without a doubt. That's solid, 100%. I have made a lot of personal friends and gained a lot of loyal listeners through the true crime community. And they become very good friends. And I mean that. Like, I would hang out with them offline if I could. I talk to them offline, like by messenger and stuff often. So I want to point out again, nothing at that time, whenever you guys see that episode that I say, was official at that time. Now, I went to go record, and then I did what everybody does. I looked at the licensing agreements, and I found some music, and I had to look at the licensing agreements and try to figure out what I was going to use and what I'm not going to use to make bonus feature material. So as I got done with that, the wife came in. We have two bathrooms in our house, and one of them was in the master bedroom. So she came into the bedroom and she shut the door, which is kind of odd. And she said, "Hey, I just want you to know, in case you haven't yet," because she knew I was recording and stuff, Charles Kirk has been shot and most likely might be killed. After a minute or two of trying to comprehend that, I again asked her, to clarify. Again, what now? So she told me again as she was looking at her phone. I asked her to give me a minute. And then I went to look for more information. See, my grandfather's generation, they had CNN and Fox News. My generation, we had Blaze Network, numerous different podcasters like Joe Rogan and all kinds of different podcasting networks. But like I say Blaze because Blaze is like my CNN and my Fox News. In the morning time, whenever I get up to make my coffee, I am watching Pat Gray, Sarah Gonzalez, Pat Gray, his show, and then Glenn Beck. That's my morning lineup to get the news. So I'm going to move on a little bit here. Again, I'm reading this as I was writing it out. I went to go watch my favorite news host, which happens to be Dr. Michael Savage. I'm saying that because I listen to Michael Savage and mainly Michael Savage, though, since basically high school off and on. He was probably the first news host that I ever listened to, and talk radio host at that for sure. And then I looked at Pat Gray. Of course, Keith, what's up, bro? Whenever you see this, if you're watching this, Chris and Jeffy. Then I looked at Sarah Gonzalez's social media, and of course, I had to look at Glenn Beck. And let's not forget the conservative twins. Now, when I first started podcasting, a lot of people, because of my background, said, who inspired Mike to even do this? Why did he do this? I was a very weird individual, dude. Because of the stuff I was involved with before, I was actually on the verge. I wouldn't say paranoid, but I was way more worried about stuff, And they're like, why would you, out of all people, decide to do this podcasting thing? And really, I'm going to tell you guys really what it is. It's Charles Kirk. It's the conservative twins. To be honest, and Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro. When I saw them doing their podcast shows, I was working at Price Tower in the laundry room. And I remember thinking to myself, if somebody like Charles Kirk, this young, intelligent guy, he was so young. Especially when I first started doing this 6 years ago. He was so young. Guys like the conservative twins, Joe Rogan, Sarah Gonzalez, girls like her, Pat Gray. I mean, if they could do that, we can all do that. We can all have an avenue of communication. And I said, I'm going to do the same thing. I've been talking my whole life to people who are just chill. Here, go smoke this blunt and go chill out. You know what I'm saying? I was like, finally, I have a way to get my thoughts out there. Anyways, so listen, let's get back on a serious subject. So to look at Charles Kirk's information, I heard what everyone was saying. While I was listening to everyone, I looked into my own listeners. My listeners is a mix of veterans, I would say, from Vietnam War and Korea War, all the way down to, I'm talking real hippies, criminals, blue-collar workers, and true crime community people. And I wanted to see what they were talking about with Charles Kirk. What was being said. And because of my listener base being so diverse of a population of different types of people, and believe me, it really is. It's so interesting when I pull up stats. But anyways, mainly due to, before me finding God, and a lot of them are listening still, they're liberal and conservative. So I knew it would be a good way to kind of gauge what everybody would be saying last night. And I saw everyone start commenting when I logged on to X with one another. And everyone seeming to be they were basically close to boiling over. I saw the leftists making very grotesque and sickening videos celebrating his death. And I began thinking about Charles Kirk personally. Who was he? What his actual message was? And how much he actually loved God. How he was actually a very peaceful person. He believed in free communication and open communication. He believed in debating people. Because again, why? He believed in open communication, and without communication, you have nothing. You have to create communication to break down barriers. There's so much to go with that, really. But he stood for being against violence. And I thought about Kirk's very last words that he uttered. The chaos at that scene. I thought about his impact that, as I was saying earlier, that he had on myself. My wife, she was a massive supporter of Charles Kirk, and much more so than myself. And I saw how she was crying, like so many others. And I thought about how massive of an impact that he had on the mega Republican Party and politics in general, not just United States politics. Even people overseas wanted to know what Charles Kirk was thinking. When I began podcasting, Charles Kirk, he became, like I said earlier, one of my first inspirations. I was like, wow, we now have a voice and we now have an avenue to voice our opinions in the same way that the conservative twins did. I was like, we all can. We can all finally have a voice and our opinions to be out there. Seriously, so many people think that they know who I actually like, watch in an aspect or mentor type of fashion. And I mean that by mentor by watching them and my earlier radio inspirations. And like I said earlier, Charles Kirk is the top of my list. But it was Michael Savage and Rush Limbaugh in high school. And then it was Charles Kirk, conservative twins, Glenn Beck, and Stoner Van Houten. Stoner Van Houten, I know, is an unorthodox person to mention in this sense. But when I first started podcasting, I was doing a lot of true crime. And, he kind of helped me out with trying to develop loosening up. I was very, very just rigid, like, hey, how you doing? This would be the nightly news. Just very serious like. And, Stoner was like, yo, Mike, you got to loosen up, bro. You got to have some fun. You got to loosen up. And, I'll forever say that because it was him that really got that driven home to me. Because I thought about it. I was like, okay, So I thought about, let me get back on subject here. I thought about what everything would be like. Listen, Charles Kirk, he would not want us to lash out in violence. And he would not want us to give into anger and emotionally charged language coming from your adversaries and the left. Okay? He believed in open dialogue and he believed in fighting for what was right. The man was so young. He truly was. And intelligent at that. He left behind a son, a daughter, and a wife. And he was taken out of this world. And for what? A difference of opinion that many of us watching and listening right now, we all have many people in our lives that we disagree with. Am I correct on that? Because I'm pretty sure I am. I'm willing to bet right now, if you ask yourself, could I find somebody that I think would be like a fiery match for a debate? Because you guys will see eye to eye. I'm willing to bet you got about 5 of them right at the top of your front of your head. Okay? He created an avenue for us to be able to debate and talk to one another, right? And network with one another. That's an amazing thing to do. And he really did pave that way. It's ironic because his last words that he uttered was violence. I will never be able to unsee his assassination. Here's the thing. I've studied war crime, and I'm talking before all you crazy Looney Tunes start jumping up or whatever. Genocide. Not hypothetical genocide. I've studied real, historic, documented genocide. Real, historic, documented war crimes. World War II concentration camps, medical experiments, eugenics. I've seen a lot of different violent images in my life, believe me, way too many. But his assassination is one I won't forget. I'll never forget that guy leaping up and down either. The long-haired guy, yeah, right here etched in front of my head with his curly hair. Going, yeah, I'll never forget that guy. Now, and the reason for this is because myself doing podcasting and blogging, as I said earlier in this episode, I've had death threats before. I've had people come up to me and ask me weird questions. So the reason why Charles Kirk, Andy Now, Ben Shapiro is at the top of my list is because all 3 of those people are people that have put boots on the ground themselves and openly try to communicate with people coming from these ideologies. And because of that, they get attacked relentlessly by Antifa. The fake Antifa, as I call them. They'll never be anything like the real Antifa. They're just a fake, wannabe, generic version of Antifa. But anyways, neither here nor there. I've already done plenty of episodes on Antifa. You go back and look at them. There's a whole list of them. Even series specials. But anyways, LGBT, BLM, liberal extremist, and atheist. We have common people that we debate. We have common people that come to our comment sections and make unorthodox, weird comments, and etc. And then worse sometimes. And now, I saw him executed. And it was around that time that I decided it's time for me to record a response. Now, I'll continue to do political talk and current events because of Charles Kirk's death. You know, it's like Glenn Beck said, and Keith from Blaze Network. We must fight, and continue to fight for what's right, what's just. We must not give in. America needs all the voices that she can get right now. America needs all of us American men to stand up for what is right. America needs all of us to stand up for God, for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. America needs all American men's boots on the ground. We need everyone to stay observant. We need everyone to continue to expose evil. We need everyone to be truth seekers, to be the light in a world that is continuing to grow colder and darker by the minute. Listen, I want to say this again. The extremist leftists will be using Charles Kirk's death to trigger Christians and conservatives. They want us to lash out. They want us to be violent. They want us to use our guns and weapons. We must not give in to their emotionally charged language. They're going to be making disgusting comments, and they're going to be using loud noisemakers when they do it. This is called psychological warfare. Do not give in to their methods. Online, truth seekers, podcasters, bloggers, be careful what you say and how you say it. Be very cautious and careful in comment sections, especially threads and the other ones. Do not give in to their emotional triggers. We can't give in to their emotional triggers. I'm going to repeat that over and over again because in the past, I have. This isn't an episode that I thought that I would ever have to make. Charles Kirk was so young. Honestly, I was with the people that thought that eventually he could make it to be president of the United States. He was that intelligent of a young man. And can I just say this, for all you leftists and extremists out there, we know who you are. You know who you are. If you thought that you're going to make conservatives die off by taking out Charles Kirk, attempting to take out Trump and then taking out Charles Kirk, you were wrong. In a matter of less than 24 hours, you guys have been the biggest recruitment that the mega Republican Party has ever had. Thanks to you guys, more people are joining the Republicans and leaving the Democratic Party than ever before. I don't think Trump could have ever birthday wished this harder. Okay, for all you people that hate Trump, you guys just gave him his biggest birthday wish ever. And you just handed it to him on a silver platter. And on behalf of all of us that are in the conservative, especially Christian conservative, thank you. Because all your sickening rhetoric that you're doing is only helping growing the conservative party. It's only helping people move closer to God. Charles Kirk's message was always about God. He brought it back to God every single time. You know, like I said before, when I first started podcasting and blogging, I was not a Christian. I may have left Satanism as far as even 4 years prior before I did podcasting, but I was not a Christian at that point. And I still listen to Charles Kirk. I still listen to Ben Shapiro. I still listen to Joe Rogan, naturally. And I can honestly say, I think that you guys have just made the biggest catapult for people ever. I've already seen countless people leaving the Democratic Party. Some of these people are big names because of how disgusting the Democratic leaders are and how disgusting the DNC party supporters are acting about Charles Kirk's death. It's absolutely disgusting. I don't remember, I can't recall seeing any real conservative host of any podcast show really going all ham and like crazy wishing death on Biden or wishing death on Kamala. They might have said, I hope that they get put in handcuffs for the charges, for the crimes that we believe that they committed. I'm going to say that we know that they committed, but we never wish death on them. We might disagree on our ideologies on being pro-life, but we never wish death on you. You know what I'm saying? Me personally, I can honestly say that my stances on the LGBT party, for the most part, have been drastically misunderstood. Really, truthfully. As a Christian, I have a very strong spiritual stance against it. That is true. As an American, though, I want to remind everybody that I actually, my adopted dad was gay, so I actually believe that people have a right to be with whoever they want to be. However, you don't have the right to tell my child about your sexuality, about your ideology, without me being present there. You definitely don't have a right to be a teacher and telling them your personal political viewpoints or your ideologies. You definitely don't have a viewpoint to try to tell them your feelings about Trump, other than him being the president of the United States in a good way. You don't have that right. You don't have that right to sneakily put LGBT propaganda programming and racial programming to make people fight one another into children's cartoons and in movies. You don't have the right to talk to minors about sexual nature subjects without their parents being present. You don't have that right. And I would think that most of that would be common sense stances. You know what I mean? And I feel like in a way he kind of was similar. Like spiritually speaking, I'm against it because it goes against my faith. It goes against my beliefs. And it gets tricky for me. But ultimately, at the end of the day, my viewpoint is keep it to yourself. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it like in that sense of nobody has a right to see it. That's not what I'm saying. I know how people try to take these things and try to twist them around. And this is my first time back at doing this for a while. So, because I did step out for a while. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they don't have a right to be sneaky and trying to preach it onto my children without me being present or talking to them about political or religious things. That's not what I sent them to school for. Doctors and psychologists, they do not have a right to treat my child without me being present there. They don't have a right to do that to our children, to just put medical ideas and thoughts in their head without us being present whenever they're doing it. They don't have that right. This shouldn't be an anti-LGBT thing. This should just be a common sense factor. You know, I think that a lot of people, they frankly had just thrown out common sense out the window. And am I agitated by his death? As you could tell, absolutely I am. Am I upset by it? Yes. That's why it took me so long to do this recording. It's December, or not December, sorry, see? It's already September 11th whenever I'm doing this recording. So yeah, it's taken me a minute to process his death and taking a process on the impact of the conservative movement and the Christian movement that's going on globally. And it's been a big impact. He was taken out way too soon. I want to offer my thoughts and my prayers to Charles Kirk's family, especially his wife and his children. And my condolences goes out to them. People that personally knew him, my condolences goes out to you too. I never heard anything bad about him. Anytime anybody talked about Charles Kirk, it was always in a good way. You never heard anything really bad about him. See, that's the thing to me. That's the thing to me. You know, it's like, for myself, I'm a mouthy dude, okay? I can be very mouthy. I push boundaries. I like to take stuff and kind of just push it to the edge just as far as I could, you know. Let's just take it a little bit further. I like to do that. I like to take things to a little bit edge. But Charles Kirk wasn't one of those. You know, he wasn't one of those guys that's just taking something to the edge to get a reaction or to gauge a reaction. He was a very peaceful person. He believed in open dialogue. He actually inspired us to do that, to have open dialogue and to be peaceful. He believed in communication was an avenue to being peaceful, to create understanding. I don't want to continue rambling on, but at any rate, I did want to offer my condolences for Charles Kirk and his death and acknowledgement of his death. It's a horrific thing. I think that people that are acting out right now, making jokes about his death, are absolutely bizarre. They're not okay. It's not okay to do that to somebody, to his family. Making shirts and walking around like holding your neck and stuff like that, and it's not all right. You know what I mean? It's not cool. But that's me. But anyways, this has been Mike from Mike's Random Thoughts. You guys expect more material to come out soon. I got a new episode. I'm actually debating if I'm going to record today or if I'm going to record tomorrow, but I've already got 2 recordings I got released, counting this one. So I'm behind a little schedule. We're going to get it rolling through again pretty soon, on track. But again, I wanted to release this message, and I wasn't planning on doing this one at all, about Charles Kirk, and I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an understanding to what I personally felt about Charles Kirk, PragerU, and etc. Again, this has been Mike from Mike's Random Thoughts. Everybody, I hope you have a good night. And I'll catch you guys on the next one, okay? All right, later.